Good evening, everybody. This is Scott Morganroth here at the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, and we welcome you to Episode 9 of Fantasy Football with Ryan Skolrud, Week 11. Ryan, I'm glad that Tyler Lockett wasn't at his best because my brother-in-law Todd had him, but you know what? He's out of the way. Then again, I kind of lost out on that night too when Emmanuel Sanders went down, so there was a little bit of a wash. But what do you have with Tyler Lockett?
Well, the thing with Tyler Lockett is he was actually released from the hospital today and was flown home in Paul Allen's sister's jet. Paul Allen's sister is the one who took over the team after Paul Allen passed away last year. He spent 2 nights in the hospital in San Francisco, and again, what happened was it was a lower leg contusion, basically a bruise. But what happened with this bruise, it started swelling to the point that they were worried about what they call a compartment issue. And what that is where the swelling gets so severe it can cause nerve and cell damage. Well, he was able to avoid surgery. It looks like they've gotten the swelling down enough that actually Pete Carroll, seeing everything that he has on Lockett's injury, fully believes that Lockett will be ready to play in Week 12 when they come back from bye and go up against the Eagles. So, good news on the Tyler Lockett front. The fact that he gets a bye week, which helps to get healthy. He should be ready for the Week 12 matchup.
So you're saying that Paul Allen's sister is now the owner of the Seahawks?
She is now the principal owner of the Seahawks, correct.
How's that working out there with his sister?
So far, it's been fine. There have been no major issues. It was really a very easy transition. The Allen family altogether has had a very good relationship with the team, with the organization. It was a very seamless transition. She has not done anything to really shake anything up. She has allowed Schneider and Carroll to do their jobs the way that they have been, even under the way that they were even under her brother. And so, like I said, it's been a really seamless transition. You would, in a way, almost never know that Paul Allen wasn't in charge of the team anymore.
Okay. Well, so you're telling me it's a seamless transition. All right, so let's talk about Austin Hooper.
So, for the number 1 tight end in fantasy right now, Austin Hooper looks like he is going to be out about a month with his MCL sprain or strain or however specifically they want to classify it, which obviously not good for those who have him on their fantasy teams. In terms of what this is going to do for the fantasy landscape we'll start off with Atlanta. It means that Russell Gage is going to get a lot more involved in the offense. He is the number 3 wide receiver now that Atlanta has traded away Mohamed Sanu. He didn't get so involved 2 weeks ago when Atlanta first had their game without, or 3 weeks ago they had their game without Mohamed Sanu. He got a lot more involved this week, especially after Austin Hooper went down. So it should provide some decent streaming opportunities for those who want to use Russell Gage, need a wide receiver dealing with bye weeks and injuries this week. As far as the tight end landscape, Luke Stalker is the backup tight end for Atlanta. I think in terms of him, I don't think it's really going to do much for him. I still think that Russell Gage is more likely to be the likely recipient of touches in Atlanta. I think that for those who need a tight end, Darren Fells is still widely available. While it's not the best matchup, he's been targeted a lot more in the Houston offense than tight ends have been in the past, while Deshaun Watson has been the quarterback. So I think that Fells is an option to pick up if you desperately need a tight end for this week.
Well, you know how much I agree with you that I hate Thursday night football, and I don't know if I have any players on it, but I know one I don't have is James Conner. That would have been last year, but you say he is active for Thursday night football. Is that right?
As of right now, yes, he is. He is active for this week. He has been practicing in full pretty much all week. So with that, in terms of those who went and got Samuels this week, Jalen Samuels, I think that it might be a good idea to hold on to him unless you have a very, very deep bench of running backs. I have a couple leagues where I have actually released Jalen Samuels to pick up guys like Brian Hill, who we'll talk about later in the game rundowns. I think that Jalen Samuels may be a guy that if you're a little thin at running back is still one to hold on to because of a lot of the injuries that Connor has been facing over the last couple of years. Especially coming back from a shoulder injury, if he gets hit really hard by a linebacker in this game on Thursday Night Football, he may be going right back out again. And so I think Jalen Samuels may still be involved. They may take it a little bit easy with Connors in this game. And so I think that Jalen Samuels is still worthy of owning in fantasy football right now.
Okay. All right, let's talk about Colin Kaepernick and his workout this Saturday.
Okay, so I know that Colin Kaepernick is an extremely volatile subject. Let's just put it that way to be politically correct, I guess.
Nice choice of words, Ryan.
And honestly, right now, I don't care whether someone agrees or disagrees with his politics, whether or not he should kneel or not kneel. None of that really matters to me right now. What I want to look at is, in terms of this workout, what does it mean for the fantasy landscape? Right. And really, I don't think it affects anything this season. From what I've read across multiple tweets from NFL analysts and insiders like Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, what I have seen kind of be the discussion is that it's not been handled very well so far by the NFL. What I mean by that, there's a couple points to look at. The NFL basically made this announcement Tuesday, and Colin Kaepernick's representatives basically got the announcement a few minutes before the public did on Twitter. So it's kind of a last-minute thing, it looks like. It looks like this will be like the only time that the NFL really feels that it's a proper time to actually do this for Kaepernick, to give him this workout. They've invited all 32 teams and their representatives. However, Colin Kaepernick's representation has asked the NFL to provide a list of all the execs and or scouts or all the teams that would be providing someone to come to this workout to see him. And while the NFL originally agreed to that, they have now changed their minds and will not be providing that list to Kaepernick's representation. Again, whether you agree with Kaepernick and everything or not, his political stances, I don't think that's right. I think they should just provide him the list of people who are going to be there. There have been some representatives of teams that have already reached out to Colin Kaepernick and his agents and said that have, as a courtesy, said that they will not be there at the workout in Atlanta. They will not have anyone that can necessarily go out to the workout, and have actually expressed some concerns as to why the NFL has even done this in the first place.
Right.
And so there's just a lot of, I think, misunderstanding all around on everyone's part as to what the basis for this is, why this is happening. One of the things that people have looked at is the fact that with the partnership that the NFL has created with Jay-Z and some of his foundations, dealing with some social justice work and that sort of thing, they think that has some involvement in this and why this is just now getting taken care of. Another thing to look at is that if teams are looking at Colin Kaepernick, they're most likely not looking at him for the 2019 season. They're looking at him for 2020.
Really?
And yeah, that's the consensus that I've seen in a lot of the texts or in a lot of the tweets and everything, that teams that aren't really any teams that would necessarily want to bring him in for this year, but they want to see how physically ready is he to take on the rigors of playing in the NFL, and to come back after having 2 years off, and so a lot of them are looking at, well, if he can provide this, maybe we use him, maybe we can pick him up as a stopgap, for between, whether we think there's a better quarterback class coming up or a free that we want to attack, but we maybe can't necessarily do it this next year. So that's some of the consensus from what I've seen so far on the Kaepernick workout this weekend.
All right, let me give you my perspective on that. Although I like what you're saying, it's pretty interesting insight. My gut feeling, and it's only a gut feeling, so take it for whatever it's worth, okay, is that considering there are so many inadequate backups, at least for the time being, or teams that are so desperate to find a quarterback, I would think that if his workout looks good and he's in good physical shape, and, they could get mentally on the same page, I wouldn't be surprised if the guy gets 2 or 3 games under his belt with the right situation and plays. But, what you're saying makes a whole lot of sense for 2020. It really does. So, I don't know. I guess they certainly caught I'm very intrigued by it because there's so many teams that could probably use a guy with his skill set, but it all comes down to what they see, I think, on Saturday. So, transitioning from what we both think, even though we might be a little bit different on that, you say 2020, I would say a good little audition for 2020 with a couple of games, 2 or 3, depending on what type of teams could really use them at this point. It's intriguing nonetheless. So we'll transition from Colin to Eric Reed, who seems to think that the Kaepernick workout feels like a PR stunt by the NFL.
Well, and again, I think that is a concern of some. Whether it is or not, I am not going. I don't know. It could be, for those who actually want Kaepernick back in the league and think that he can be a solid contributor. Sure, I have no problem giving him an opportunity. For those people that think that he was blackballed out of the league, I don't necessarily believe that if there are going to be teams there to show up and see how he does with his workouts. I think that this could be the final judgment either way of, okay, is he just a solid quarterback that had a couple of good seasons, but is more likely relegated to a backup role, or is he actually good enough to be a continual starter, or was he just blackballed out of the league?
Well, I think he was blackballed, and when he had opportunities, he made an idiot out of himself, because I know the Ravens had John Harbaugh, but then his girlfriend spouted off. That didn't help his case any either. And then, of course, Seattle showed a mild degree of interest as a potential insurance policy for Russell Wilson. And with the way Stephen Ross does things in Miami, I think that Stephen Ross would have had an opportunity, but then I think the being blackballed didn't help his cause. But I'll be curious to see something about that. So, yeah, I think he was blackballed. The collusion case has been settled. But is it a matter of whether teams are desperate at quarterback? I actually might agree with Eric Reed that maybe this is a PR stunt with the way that why did it take so long to get to this point? Because they're trying to show a degree of good faith. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's interesting.
And one other thing to look at is this was not part of the settlement that Kaepernick and Eric Reed had with the NFL. This was not part of that. So this is something completely different. So at the same time, I can still see why Eric Reed might think that this is just a PR stunt. So.
Well, meanwhile, Eric Reed's been in the league and he's gotten paid, so Kaepernick
Sure.
hasn't. So, and Eric Reed's done well with the Panthers. He really has. But Colin Kaepernick had opportunities